It's 12:05 in the afternoon here on 90.3 FM, and Helping Seniors of Brevard is ready to get underway. I'm John Harper, president of Helping Seniors of Brevard. Usually Kerry Fink, our executive director, is here this time, but he's on special assignment, so we'll be checking in with him later. But filling in for Kerry Fink is our good friend, Jim Votro. And Jim, you've got a great guest, a good friend of ours for many years, attorney Bill Johnson.
You remember him.
Yeah, I do remember him, yeah.
All of us have these memory problems as we get older, that's there. Before we start today, I think we have to stop and think a little bit. We did have a big loss this past week. Our senior partner, more or less, our master founder, Joe Steckler, passed away, finally up in Maryland with his family. And unfortunately, we are going to really miss Joe. But he'll be here in spirit, and everything that I believe he set forth in motion will carry forward. As well, at least we're going to do the best job we can to make sure that that in fact happens, especially with John Harper at the helm. And John is the president of the organization right now. So we're going to be talking a little bit about Joe, very much so about Joe, because I think there's a lot to be said, and there's a lot that we should say about him. And all I can say to you, truthfully, is that we got a lot going on all the time because of Joe Steckler. Senior citizens are absolutely adding up here in Brevard County, primarily because we know what we're doing here, because we have seniors and Helping Seniors of Brevard, because basically Joe Steckler always took the idea that information is power, and if you've got a problem and you don't know what to do about it, you have someplace to call and somebody to help you work on it to a certain degree, and we do that. That's what Helping Seniors is all about. And information being power is a powerful thing that everybody can use. And we picked this thing out. There's so many things. Joe has been on the radio and television and all kinds of things. And he's been on there for years. And, it's kind of hard to pick and choose something about Joe Steckler because we want to memorialize everything that he did. But we found this one little item here that came from Older Americans Month, a proclamation by the Brevard County Board of Commissioners, and they came with that proclamation. Then the Commission on Aging stepped up, and we figured maybe this would be a good idea because it gives you an idea of what the Commission of Aging says and also what Joe Steckler says. And this, I think, is a pretty important thing. And then we'll get to Bill Johnson in just a minute. I'm a little verbose, as they say, but we will get to Bill Johnson, and maybe we'll talk a little bit about Joe Steckler there, too. And then, of course, all the important things, all the important information that we're supposed to get to. And Joe would be mad at us if we didn't do that. But we're going to do that very shortly. So this is the Commissioner on Aging.
We haven't seen you for about a year.
Yes, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. I'll have to start coming more often. Well, again, my name is John Potomsky, and I have the pleasure and honor of serving as chairman of the Brevard County Commission on Aging. And we are here today to honor one of Brevard's outstanding citizens in recognition of Older Americans Month in May. Currently, as Commissioner Pritchard said, 25% of Brevard's population is over the age of 60. This is more than the population of those people under the age of 18. And yet the people under the age of 18 rightfully receive greater county funding than our senior citizens. Many of our seniors have worked many years and paid taxes. However, almost every month at our BCOA meeting, we hear from seniors who come literally crying to inform us that they can either not pay for skyrocketing rent, or the food pantries have run out of food, or that they can't afford their medication, and often, some of them, all three. In the Bible, some of our Lord's disciples asked him, "Lord, when did we feed you? When did we shelter you? When did we take care of you?" Our Lord replied, "Whenever you did these things for the least of my brethren, you did it for me." The needs of many less fortunate seniors has increased over the last several years, and they cannot make it on Social Security alone, especially when some receive only $900 a month. Formerly, the county had allotted $500,000 a year for CBO funding, which has been eliminated. Many groups, including Meals on Wheels, are now facing a deficit and are having to reduce the number of people they serve due to rising costs and decreased funding. I'm a conservative, but being a conservative should mean more than just financially. As George H.W. Bush once stated, I am a conservative, but a compassionate conservative. I guess that the Commission might consider in their funding deliberations. Well, today we are honoring a man who not only served our country as a captain in the U.S. Navy, but upon retiring to Brevard County, he saw a need to serve our seniors. He first founded the Alzheimer's Association and developed 3 locations throughout the county, now known as Joe's Club, to serve seniors with dementia. After that, he accomplished the realization that seniors who don't have dementia also have needs, and he formed Helping Seniors of Brevard. And at the age of 90, the young age of 90, he still works to help meet the needs of our seniors. So without further ado, it's my esteemed pleasure to present to you Captain Joe Steckler.
Being tied to this wheelchair doesn't help a whole heck of a lot, but I'll get around that. I'm working in therapy right now to try to get back to walking, and I'm going to do it. But, you know, I participated in a United Way study in 1992, and we came up with 19 needs of people in Brevard County. 9 of those needs directly affected seniors. We have been working to resolve those issues since 1992, and not a whole heck of a lot of progress has been made. One of the biggest problems is making the people in charge aware of what can be done and the need to have a good plan in place to solve the problems in the future. I won't give up on that, not until I die. But I just want to thank the commissioners and all the commissioners before them that have helped us in Brevard County make people aware of the problems and then to resolve the problems. People like my own organization that are here today, John Potomsky and the Commission on Aging, Ian Goldman and the Housing and Human Services staff of your own organization. All these people need to come together and work for a common good. That's the only way we'll ever solve the problem. So I just want to thank everyone that has helped us. I didn't get any of this recognition by myself. It took a lot of people working with me and for me to make it happen. So I just want to thank all of you, everyone, the county, my own people, and just the people that have contributed to helping us make these things come together. Thank you very much.
And John and Bill, Joe Steckler, that was classic Steckler right there. I mean, the man was 38 years in the United States Navy, ascended to the rank of captain. He was a submarine commander. He was a really very good military man. He worked very hard at it, went to the Naval Academy. And you know what? He came back, he retired after he did a stint in the old sailors' home, more or less, in terms of taking care of that for the Navy. And then he came back here and continued his service for what seems like another 38 years because he started that Brevard Alzheimer's Fund. Everything about Joe Steckler was all about service. And I think we all should take a good look at ourselves and see what services we might be able to perform for our fellow men, more or less. And Joe is one of those people that will always remain in my memory. People asked a long time ago, "How did you get hooked up with Joe Steckler?" Joe Steckler, if Joe Steckler stood there and he saw you were there, he was either going to paint you or hook you into the Helping Seniors Project. And I'm very happy to be one of those volunteers that he hooked in many, many years ago at the radio station at WMEL, the old WMEL. So, at any rate, I know Bill Johnson is standing by. We haven't gotten to him yet, unfortunately, but there will be some sort of a memorial service. A lot of people have called asking if there's going to be a memorial service, a celebration of life, so to speak, for Joe. And there is going to be one. As soon as we get that information, we'll put it out through all means. We'll put it out for the radio, Facebook, and the website. And all of that will be happening as soon as we get the information. A lot of family things, a lot of things are going on right now. So, at any rate, let's start the program here again with Bill Johnson, our board-certified elder law attorney here in beautiful downtown Brevard County. And Bill, what do you think about Joe? What are some of your recollections?
Oh, I always said, if he's calling you, don't answer because you're about to be volunteered for something.
I've had that feeling. I've had that feeling before.
Yeah.
Like I said, if you're standing next to him, he was either going to paint you or he was going to hook you in. So,
and as Dr. Potomsky said, Joe was all about direct action. There's a lot of organizations out there that collect money for folks to do research on different diseases. He was about getting donations and putting that money to work right here in Brevard. And as Dr. Potomsky said, the Brevard Alzheimer's Foundation used that money and those funds to open 3 daycares, one in Melbourne, one in Titusville, one down in Barefoot Bay, where people could drop off their loved ones who had dementia. And then that expanded beyond even that they were able to service those areas. And then, not for nothing, then he started up another organization.
Absolutely,
and,
that's
helping
Joe.
seniors of Brevard, and trying to get the information out to everybody by whichever means. In Senior Scene magazine, on the radio, and then eventually Helping Seniors of Brevard found its own home, and they, of course, have named that the Joe Steckler Resource Center, and there are a variety of businesses in there, and they operate a telephone number where anybody can call in about
321-473-7770.
And if you have some sort of issue facing you, they'll find the answer out for you. And they won't just refer you to somebody and say, oh, call this person. They'll get to the bottom of that. And I think we've heard many times a lot of the phone calls these days are about senior housing issues and finding affordable housing. So, it's really done a fantastic job of working with the county in that regard and trying to find solutions for people in need. And of course, there's a wide variety of disciplines that are involved with Helping Seniors of Brevard. There's attorneys, there's healthcare people.
Just about anything that can happen to you, Bill. Basically, helping seniors of Brevard can kind of direct you in one way or another, and possibly very, very definitely help you. You're going to be better off after making that phone call, no matter what.
And if they don't know the answer, they know people who will know the answer.
That's it. So. That's it. And again, the telephone number is 321-473-7770. So, we're going to keep telling you that number so that you can copy it down, grab your pencil and paper, and if you want to listen to this show, you can go to the podcast or go to the website. And generally, we're going to have some interesting things there for you that maybe tell you a little bit more about the organization and tell you about Joe Steckler in particular. So, at any rate, let me see here.
I was going to add, and if Kerry Fink was here today, he'd be telling you that the Helping Seniors of Brevard operates mainly off of its car raffle.
Oh, yeah. Oh, we would
So,
definitely be telling you
make sure
about the
get
car
out
raffle.
there and buy those tickets.
Right, and they had the big car show, I think, just last weekend at Ascension, and they had, a lot of, like, over 300 cars there and everything, and they use that every year as the kickoff for their ticket sales. And, folks, it doesn't really matter when you buy the ticket. It just matters that you buy the ticket, and you get, I think it's five for $100 or $4 for $25 each. And I think it's a worthwhile thing. I've never won because I can't win. I mean, all of us good old volunteers and folks who are associated with helping seniors in any way, we're kind of exempt from the winning thing. But I can tell you that the gentleman that won last year was very happy and is extremely happy. And he I believe he has a Chevrolet, the Tundra, the Toyota Tundra or something like that.
Okay.
Really nice car. And, he was very happy, and he's very happy to tell everybody, buy your ticket now. So I think he's already got about 4 or 5 of them in his wallet. So at any rate, Bill Johnson, board-certified elder lawyer, attorney here in Brevard. There are actually very few and far between to have a board-certified elder. That means that the guy knows what he's talking about when it comes to older people. And, Joe Steckler's big push this year has been get all your ducks in a row. And in order to get your ducks in a row, one of the things that we might need to really think about is what our legal situation is, what we are going to be running into with health care, what we're going to be running into with family, what we're going to be running into with government, all that stuff. So, I mean, Bill Johnson, tell me a little bit about board certified, what that means, and number 2, tell me a little bit about what it really means to actually start considering your ducks and putting your ducks in a row.
Well, board certification, you have to have a peer review. You have to show a certain number of hours and matters that you've handled in a variety of different categories. And then there is a test. And then if you're lucky enough to pass the test and become board certified, then you have to do 130 credit hours of CLE, continuing education, every 5 years, which works out to like probably 2.5 more continuing education than a normal attorney would have to do.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to stay in the loop and keep up on everything.
In other words, you're staying current all the time. So every time the legislature makes a little burp this way or that way, you kind of get the appropriate information fast and first, and most importantly, most accurately.
Correct, and that's kind of what we're going to talk about today.
That's good, but we are going to do that, and I really would like to start doing that, Bill. I think it's a good idea. I'm Jim Votro. We have Bill Johnson, Attorney Bill Johnson, from the William A. Johnson Professional Association, which is located on, is it off of Wickham? Yes, it is.
Off of Wickham on Inverness.
Mm-hmm. I know where it is.
Up in the Sun Tree area.
I don't know all the numbers, that kind of thing.
Right.
And the telephone number that we have, how can people reach the William A. Johnson?
They can call us at 321-253-1667.
Well, I always get caught up in telephone numbers because I always think about it and then I forget it. So the more I say it, the more somebody might actually write it down and be able to use it. I always hate it because I always pick the worst number in the world. I'm going to take that. I'm going to remember that. I'm going to remember that. I never remember it. So we want to give our audience a chance to really know and understand what all this really means in terms of putting your ducks in a row. So let's talk a little bit about what we're actually here to have in the program today, and that is what's going on with the legislature.
Well, as most of you may know or may not know, the legislature is meeting. Mm-hmm. They just had a special session on immigration that got kind of nasty, from what I understand.
I understand that too.
Yeah, and so anyway, they're back to doing committee meetings now, and bills are being put through the system, and there are some interesting bills that are coming through that affect the elderly. Mm-hmm. The first of these, Senate Bill 64, is a bill that was introduced to allow what they call granny cams. That would be to be able to put a camera in a nursing home room so that you could watch your loved one and ensure they're getting good care and not being neglected or abused or any of that stuff.
That sounds like a really good idea, Bill. I mean, like the old nanny cams for the babies or for the kids in the daycare. I really like that idea, actually.
And a lot of people really do like that. There are some complications. You have to consider the person, HIPAA privacy. And if they share a room with somebody, how are you going to ensure that you're keeping the other person's private? There are also concerns, that you may have to put up signs that say camera in use.
Video surveillance or something. Yeah.
But it sounds to me like a very good idea. And that way you can make sure your loved ones are getting good care and getting what they're paying for.
Right, exactly. I oftentimes think of that. You see a lot of these elder care facilities, and you have to wonder, if your mom or your dad, your grandma or whatever is really getting the right proper care. And
I can tell you there's been some horror stories where some facilities are already allowing that, like assisted livings, and they've caught staff abusing the residents and sexually assaulting residents.
Oh, wow.
And so it really has been a really good tool for catching those kinds of people.
Well, what do you think is going to happen up in the legislature? Are they going to go with it or not?
Well, I think they will, but I think it's going to be modified from its current form. You're going to have some pushback from the nursing home industry on how this is going to work, but I think there's enough momentum that enough people want to be able to do this.
Yeah.
So I think you'll see this one go through.
Well, I'm looking very much forward to having it go through. I'll tell you, the more I think about that, the more I really think it can alleviate a lot of that problem that we have in some of those horror stories that we got. There's always going to be some idiot out there that's going to be doing something stupid, but the idea that we can keep a better handle on keeping those people away from doing that is going to be really good as far as I'm concerned. So, Bill, in the second half of our show, what are we going to continue this little thing on the radio?
I will talk a little bit about a bill that's meant to help stop some scammers. There is another bill about patient-directed doctor's orders.
Yeah.
A little bit about pool trust. A little bit discussion about some other bills that people may not find interesting, but we look at.
Well, we're not. Those are the bills we're not going to pay, right?
And then I was going to talk a little bit about. A lot of people don't realize, but in December of 2024, the Supreme Court in Florida upended the way we do civil litigation in the state of Florida. And it's a pretty major change.
Really?
And so I would just spend a little time on that because it's going to really affect the way we do things.
Okay, well, we'll be back with the second half of Helping Seniors of Brevard, our weekly lunchtime gathering here on Wednesdays from 12 to 1. And we'll be right back. We're going to try and get John Harper to do the weather on the mid-show break. So we'll get ready to go, and, let's go here.
12:34 in the afternoon here on 90.3 FM. You're listening to the Wednesday edition of Helping Seniors of Brevard. Your host, Carrie Fink, is on assignment for today. Filling in for Carrie is our good friend, our colleague, and co-host, Jim Votro, and Jim's special guest for today is elder attorney Bill Johnson. So, Jim, we'll let you take it from here.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Harper. I really do appreciate that. At any rate, we were talking before about the legislature before the mid-show break there, and we got a lot of ground I want to cover today. I mean, I know there's enough crazy things going on in the legislature, but they all can affect us. And Bill keeps his finger on those things to make sure that, if we have anything coming at us, we're going to see it first, and we'll be able to know about it. So, Bill, what else are we going to be looking at? We talked about granny cams and some of the other issues. What else is coming up?
There is a bill that the elder law section of the Florida Bar is supporting. It's Senate Bill 106, which one of the problems, let me back up, one of the problems we always have when somebody's scamming an elderly person is we have no idea of who that person is. You know, it could be coming through the email, it could be coming by text message, and we don't know who that person on the other end who's, scamming them out of money. So what we are proposing, which is kind of unique, is that we are able to serve a scammer in the same way they scammed the elderly person.
Oh, wow.
So instead of having to get a process server and try and, which will be impossible to, go serve somebody in Eastern Europe or Russia or Nigeria, we can just send a summons back via the same email that they sent to the person they exploited. And then what happens is we can have hearings, and they're notified of the hearings. Of course, they can participate if they want.
Yeah.
I doubt they will.
Yeah.
But it also allows us to get orders now to freeze their accounts and things like that to put an end to this person scamming.
Well, are they U.S. bank accounts or are they foreign bank accounts?
Well, it all depends. If they're U.S. bank accounts, obviously it's a lot easier. But if we get court orders telling banks to withdraw the money back, things like that, it gives us a lot more options.
I like that
on
idea.
how we can go after these scammers.
I like that idea a lot.
Yeah, there are some due process questions with that, but we're trying to think outside the box because, once somebody gets scammed, it's really hard to do much of anything.
Right.
Especially if you don't know who the person who did it is.
Right. So technology is striking back, so to speak,
Correct.
I like that idea. I really do.
Yeah. So that's another one. Also, they have something, House Bill 219 from 2024 was the patient-directed doctor's order, which is kind of confusing. It's where the doctor and the patient can come up with an end-of-life decision for somebody.
Oh, well, what does that mean? That doesn't mean assisted suicide, does it?
Well, it would mean that they could terminate life support.
Oh, yeah, okay.
If the person met, certain criteria.
Right.
The problem with that, at least as far as I see it, is that we already have something called a living will, where you spell out those wishes. And why do we need another way of doing this? And of course, if you don't have a living will, there's a way to do it. You have to convene the ethics department of the hospital and that kind of thing. But it's going to add a layer of confusion in there, but I'll tell you, it's come back year after year after year.
Well, see, my thought is, right off the bat, when you were talking about it, it sounded like assisted suicide.
Correct.
And that's not my understanding of what I want to do. Like you said, living will. And that makes a lot of sense to keep your documents up to date, folks, for sure. But, having a living will or various powers of attorney or anything else makes a lot more sense than just having something that kind of gives them the idea that turn the switch off.
Well, basically, it's a conversation between the doctor and the patient, and the doctor can enter an order to turn off the switch. Of course, in the past, it's come out under various names, but the Archdiocese for the Orlando area has been very vocal against it. So we'll see if it gets any traction this year. And then we have a few bills that deal with trusts and guardianships, nothing of any major worth discussing. They're mainly dealing with technical aspects of both of those areas. The other thing I really wanted to talk about was that on December 5th, 2024, the Supreme Court of Florida amended the rules of civil procedure.
What does that mean?
Okay, those are the rules that govern lawsuits.
Okay.
Okay, and in the past, the way the system worked is that you would file a lawsuit. The defendant has 20 days to file an answer, and then you engage in what they call discovery. You take depositions, you serve them with interrogatories, you request documents to be produced, and you and the other attorney, look at your schedules and arrange when these things are going to happen. And then, if need be, motions are filed and things. And then at some point down the road, which is never really determined when, it gets set for a trial. And discovery's concluded, and you go to trial. What it is now, the way it's now going to happen, is the judge is going to do all that.
Really?
So right after the answer is filed, you're going to have this order from the judge. The judge is going to look at it and determine the complexity of the case, and that will determine how the judge puts in. But the judge is going to set deadlines for discovery, for motions, and the trial, mediation, and then the trial right at the beginning of the case.
Well, I'm wondering, what about the scope? Like, for example, you hear about these trials going on, and they want emails. If I want every email that I ever had, I've got like a billion of them sitting in Google somewhere. Can they limit the scope of that? How do you do that?
You can limit the scope of a request. It's got to be relevant and,
Is that part of this whole thing?
Well, this is more about moving trials through the system faster.
Oh, okay.
This is how the federal government does it in federal court.
Good.
The judge runs the show, basically. Whereas currently in Florida, or as of last year in Florida, the attorneys kind of ran the show. And what was happening, or what the Supreme Court, I think, thought was happening, is these cases were going on and on and on and on. And now they are going to start moving them quickly through the system, which is going to be a shock, because if you have more than one case, as an attorney, you're going to really have to be on the ball on getting things done. You can't just, and you can ask for extensions, there is that ability, but you really are going to have to be on the ball and keep things moving, and be aware of these deadlines.
Well, that makes a lot of sense, though, if you really want to keep things, as you say, moving along, because you hear these horror stories about, well, I fell in this store and it's taken me 8 years to get there, to court.
Correct, and that's what we're trying to. The system is so backlogged with all these cases that are just lingering, around.
Sure, and taking up space.
Yeah, they need to get them moving through the system. So this is how they're going to do it.
Oh, that sounds like
which is going to be a whole. If you do a lot of civil litigation, that's going to be a whole different way of doing things.
Oh, absolutely, Joe. I would go along with that, though. Not that anybody cares what I think, but I think I'd go along with that because it makes sense. That's the big thing this year. Make sense, that kind of stuff. So
I would go along with it too, because I don't have that many civil litigation cases anymore, so it's not really going to affect me that much. But
that may very well be true. But I'll tell you, I would trust you if you had one of mine.
Yeah. And we're going to have, there's going to be a learning curve to this as well.
Okay.
So there have been some continuing education programs on this and how this will work, but Yeah, the way the system works has been totally changed. It's probably one of the biggest changes to the area of civil litigation in quite a while.
Wow, that sounds really interesting. What else do we have going on up there in the ivory tower of Tallahassee?
Well, the bills are all getting filed now.
Mm-hmm.
So if you notice, when I started reading off bill numbers, I said, the Stop the Scammers bill. That's the service. That was
Right.
Senate Bill 106. And then the Granny Cam was Senate Bill 64. By the time we get done with all of this, they'll be up into the thousands on the
Wow.
bill numbers.
But if our audience is interested in getting any of these things passed, they can always call their local representative, wherever they are in Brevard County, their state senators or their legislators, and they can say, hey, I think that granny cam thing is a good idea. Hey, let's go along with this thing, or let's dump that. I mean, they have to be informed. Again, that's what Joe Steckler's all about: keeping people informed.
Correct.
Information is power, and a lot of times that power can really help us, or it can hurt us if we don't have it.
And over the years, I've written, I don't know how many letters to legislators on different things. I've never gotten a response, but at least I put my 2 cents out there.
Well, that is one of those things that we must all endure. So, are those the main things that are going on, or
The main things that are going on right now, it's still, so the way the legislature works, for those of you who don't know, is the bills go into bill drafting months ahead of time. And they have to be, you come up with your idea for the bill, and then it has to be submitted to bill drafting, and then it has to be put in a proper format, and then they cross-index it with other laws to make sure you're not, hitting this or hitting that by accident with your legislation. And then when it comes out of bill drafting, that's when it gets submitted. So well before the committee meetings, there have been bills in bill drafting as of last fall to get them through
together,
the bill
yeah.
drafting. Because if it doesn't make it out of bill drafting, it's not even going to get a number and get heard.
Yeah.
And then in each, the House and the Senate, it's got to have 3 committee hearings. So it's got to go through 3. So you got to get out of bill drafting early. Then you get it into the committees. It gets assigned to the committees, and then you got to move it through the committees. And then, of course, if you want any chance of it becoming a law, you have to have a companion bill in the other chamber. So if you're a senator and you got a bill and you're moving it through the Senate, you still got to have a House bill, and it's got to move through the House.
so it
And
takes
then-
a while to get anything done, really. But
Yeah,
it's very
and-
important to do that, though.
And then if it's the same issue, but the House bill and the Senate bill are a little different, then they get together, come up with a final bill that then has to get approved again, and then it goes to the floor for the votes.
It seems to me I remember something like that from my civics class. Why would I remember civics class? Because civics is important.
Right.
So, at any rate, Bill, let me hit you with something. We haven't. Well, we discussed this once. A lot of seniors, for example, are they're susceptible. You say scams and things of that nature, but they're susceptible to things that really kind of are legit or semi-legit. Like, for example, if you go into some of these office supply stores, it'll have a thing with a will, or you can get online with some law company and they do a will and it's only $25. You have had a lot of problems with these things because they're not necessarily keyed to the law or updated to the law or whatever. So, I mean, how do you get around that? I mean, these things. I mean, I would imagine you could sue somebody if they gave you a crummy bill.
Well, yeah, if you're going online to get your documents prepared, you better read the fine print. Because there's pages of where you release them from any liability.
Oh, really?
Oh, yes.
So that's
they
not a
take
real good
no liability for any of that.
Well, that's a real good
So
idea
if it's
to
messed
read
up, you're on your own.
read the stuff because Bill, I'm sitting there amazed at all these things that I see online, and they see advertised on Facebook, and
Even on TV now, they
Yeah.
have that one, the guy's working under his car.
oh yeah,
And
yeah,
he goes,
yeah.
I'm going to leave you, my son, I'm going to leave you the car. And then this guy just pops up.
Yeah.
Not if you don't have a will, And
Yeah. That bothers me to no end, because the last thing you want to do is you don't want to leave a problem. When you leave this earth, you want to leave what you have to whomever you want it to have.
Yeah, and it's much more than just filling out a form. There's a lot of nuances in Florida law, especially concerning houses, your homestead, that can really, mess up something.
Yeah, well, things like the ladybird deed. We hear a lot about ladybird deeds and stuff like that, and that's a part of a lot of wills and stuff. Well, tell me about the ladybird deed. You were
Well, the
talking about
ladybird
houses.
deed is like a pay-on-death deed, meaning that when you die and your death certificate gets recorded, the house automatically transfers to whomever you've designated on the deed.
Really?
So, yeah, it's like a pay-on-death bank account.
Yeah.
Like if I had a bank account payable on death to my kids, I die, they bring the death certificate in, and then they get the account.
Well, what beyond that? What is the real benefit to the ladybird deed?
Avoiding probate. Yeah.
Probate. Now
Yep,
we hear
you don't
probate.
have to go through probate.
We hear probate all the time. I mean,
Yep.
I remember years ago, I had to have a trust or something like that. I had an irrevocable trust, and I had a trust, and thank God I had good lawyers like you. But I didn't. You don't have to have that with a ladybird deed.
Correct. So we really have to look at each person's situation and see, because my gold rule is that the assets either need to be in a trust or have beneficiaries on it. And there could be a mixture of both. Your house could be in the trust, and you could have beneficiaries on your bank accounts and 401ks. But as long as you have that, everything avoids probate.
Well, the trust basically is an entity. It's like a person.
Correct.
And so that works out pretty well in terms of.
Yeah, because in the
proceeds.
trust document, you nominate somebody to be a successor trustee.
Right.
And when they put that hat on, they become bound by the terms of the trust.
And the trust
And they
never
muster
dies.
the assets, pay your debts, and distribute the trust assets. And because we have that way of putting somebody in charge to do those things, we don't have to go to probate court and have the judge put an executor in charge and do all that.
And oftentimes that's more expensive. With probate, is much more expensive than putting a trust together or something
Correct.
of that nature.
Correct.
So
Usually the executor can charge 3% of the value of the assets.
oh wow.
In Florida, we call that a personal representative. And then the attorney for the first million charges 3%, and then 2.5% for the next million, and so forth. But, on $1 million probate, that's $30,000
Yeah, I was going to
that
say
you can avoid if
Yeah.
you just do some proper planning.
Yeah, well that makes,
And it takes a while. It takes 9 to 12 months to do a probate.
that makes a lot of sense.
And that's for just a general probate.
makes sense to avoid it. What about irrevocable trust, Bill? Those
They
are-
avoid probate.
They're-
Like I said,
irrevocable trust. What does that mean? I mean, it's a trust that never dies.
Well,
or what?
the most common phrase is a revocable living trust.
Mm-hmm.
The revocable means you can amend it,
Mm-hmm.
change it. You can do away with the whole thing if you don't revoke it, if you don't like it. But you're able to change the document anytime. Living means you created it while you were alive.
Oh, okay.
So-
what about a life insurance trust though? Can
That's an irrevocable trust.
yeah.
And that is a specialized trust to make sure life insurance proceeds don't get included in your gross estate for estate tax purposes.
Ah,
But
so-
most people don't have an estate tax problem right now. The exemption's in 13 million.
Wow.
So per person, if you're married, 26 million.
Well, I don't know. I have to check my wallet here.
You might be bumping up against that.
Not really. Not really.
And right now, as we speak, they are up in Washington trying to do the budget, figuring out how to keep those tax cuts and that exemption in place, how to afford, because it's very expensive. and keep, because they expire this year. And if they expire, we go from 13 million down to, I think, 6.5 million. But again, I don't have a problem.
Well, I don't know. Like I said, I'm checking my wallet if I can find one. At any rate, Bill, what else? We talked about a lot of different things in this segment, but of all the things that, keeping your ducks in a row and building your own ductum, more or less. What else is really important? I mean, I know powers of attorney are tricky.
You need to have a durable power of attorney, somebody in place to manage your finances if you're unable. You need a designation of healthcare surrogate, somebody in place to make your healthcare decisions if you're unable to give informed consent. And then you need a living will, which is your end-of-life decisions. And we kind of talked about that earlier when I was talking about that physician-directed orders.
Well, let me ask you one crazy question here. What about the people who have nobody?
I get that a lot. There are people who do those services for people.
Really?
Yeah. There's a whole bunch of geriatric case managers who can act as power of attorney or healthcare surrogate for people.
Oh, that's where do you find them? They could call the law offices of
the easiest thing is just Google geriatric case manager.
Geriatric case manager.
Yeah, and a whole bunch of them will pop up.
Good. Well, Bill, we're coming up close to the end of our show, but we're going to be talking a little bit about car auctions and a few other things. And of course, we want to remind everybody that Kerry Fink is on assignment. I believe he's on his way to Tallahassee now. Basically, Joe Steckler, our fearless leader and founder, passed away last week, or this week actually, and unfortunately, we're unable to attend his funeral, which will be at Arlington sometime. But there will be a celebration of life for Joe Steckler, because Joe has done so much right here in Brevard County that it just boggles my mind how a guy could spend 38 years in the Navy and then virtually another 38 years serving his fellow man. And that's what this guy did. He really did. Knights of Columbus. He was a communicant of Ascension Church. Really just a really decent person, and we were sitting there joking the other day. They were saying, well, it's kind of rough for Joe. Joe had a few health run-ins before, and he always rallied. And I just turned around and says, oh, he's going to rally. Well, now he's rallied. He's going home to the Masters. So that's going to be very, very important. Once we get information on when and where Joe's celebration of life is going to be, we'll put it on this radio station. We'll put it on the website. We'll put it on Facebook. We'll put it everywhere, because I know that he has helped so many people. I mean, Joe was kind of quiet. He wrote a lot of articles, did a lot of things, organized things. He really brought things together in many, many ways, and I know that he is going to be remembered, and we're going to make sure that he's remembered, as we have Joe's Senior Resource Center at 1344 Apollo now. And we have a continuation of everything that he began. The Joe's Clubs, the Alzheimer's Foundation, the Joe's Clubs going. We have the Helping Seniors of Brevard office building, which is down, not office building, but offices, which include things like Helping Seniors Medicine. They have Helping Seniors Assistance. They have Canadian medicals, prescriptions, meds. They have all kinds of things in there that really could be availed by seniors. And so a lot of times when you call somebody, when you call Karen Warnlin at 321-473-7770, she might be able to direct you to where you need to go. And Bill, again, one more thing. If people needed to get in touch with you at the William A. Johnson PA, how would they do that?
They can call us at 321-253-1667 or go to our website, floridaelderlaw.net.
Okay, Bill. I think they're telling us that time out. We got too much time on our hands. No, we don't have much time at all. We only got about 40 seconds. Listen to Helping Seniors of Brevard right here on WEJF 90.3 FM in Palm Bay every Wednesday from 12 to 1.